The Battle of Britain is about to begin.
We got extra up there. Let's follow a range on Detroit. I'm doing out right on the target right now. I've got a couple of these right in front of me. I'm going out for it. Right, I got him.
Welcome back to the Lead Pursuit Podcast. Tonight, we're going to give you a little bit of a debrief from Historicon. We're not going to talk about the massive throngs of grognards that were out there. We're not going to talk about the smell of Bengay and other ointments that was perforating through all of the gaming halls. Nor are we going to talk about the absolute blast we had out there playing all those games and hanging out with a bunch of good dudes and dudettes. No, what we're going to talk about tonight is we're going to talk Jets, because we know that a bunch of you did not watch our live stream. Because pretty much I think the only people watching was Steve's mom and I think Steve's wife. And Leslie. Leslie was on there, and Don. So, hey, we know we had a few watchers, but most of you might have missed playing BRS Vietnam between Brett and myself. So we're going to have Brett, now the newly minted ace of North Vietnam for all of my airplanes that he shot down, is going to be on tonight. Brett, how you doing?
Colonel Sum Ting Wong won the day.
My God, you're terrible. You're horrible. And also, to counterbalance Brett's knowledge of MiGs, we're going to bring in a former Marine intelligence specialist who knows nothing about aircraft. He can't even pick them out of a lineup. Matt, how are you doing tonight?
That's absolutely true.
That is sadly true. What does MiG stand for? I don't know. It's a type of welding, right? Yeah. You don't even know that. Never mind. Okay, so moving on. I want to talk real quick about upcoming events just because we've knocked out Historicon, but we have a few more things on the schedule. NashCon, 15 to 18 August. Friday, more jet games. So if either this podcast episode interests you or you saw the live stream and you want to play post-World War II jets, Friday, starting in the morning, 9 a.m.-ish, assuming I'm not hungover. We'll start that on Friday, and then on Saturday, there will be the Blood Red Skies tournament also running from 9 to 1, or a little bit after 1. So please come play in the tournament. Please come hang around and play BRS Jets. And then I'll bring my AI stuff. So if anyone wants to play Aeronautic Imperialis, we don't have a game scheduled, but I'm sure there'll be some people there that want to play. Other events. I know Millennium Con is coming up towards the end of October, 31 October, 3 November. I don't think I will be making that one because it's going to conflict with Fall In. And it now sounds like at least I'm going to go back up. Hopefully Steve will be free and we can knock out Fall In this year and do another HMGS event. HMGS has been great to us. I know there's been a lot of turnover. I know there's always churn inside a organization with, what do I want to say? Elder members, is that the right term? Passionate defenders of the gaming hobby. That's what I shall refer to the members of HMGS as. There's always a lot of churn. There's a lot of hate and discontent in the boards this week and a little bit last week. But we're going to go back to the event because it's a lot of fun. There's a lot of cool games. There's some beautiful miniatures showcased there. And Brett, I know we're going to talk about it in a following episode. Were you once again amazed by all the crazy boards and the amazing detail put in on all those games?
Yeah, I mean, things look pretty good. It was bigger than Fall In.
Yeah. Absolutely. Much bigger setup. And so that means just twice as many cool boards that I wish I'd built or miniature sets that I wish I was playing. And of course,
well, they had all those gaming areas upstairs too. When I took the walk around that stuff, that was crazy. It was just all kinds of different things going on up there.
Yeah, a lot of the dedicated boards were in the upstairs rooms with each of the different hobby groups that was up there, or wargaming clubs that was up there. And there were some amazing ones. And there were some beautiful display boards and game boards. The Samurai board downstairs was amazing again, that I think went all the way from the ships up the dock and up to the castle. I did not get to see that one played. I wanted to make time, but then I think we got sidetracked either drinking beer or punching Mitch Reed in the face, or drinking beer and punching Mitch Reed in the face. So we missed out on watching that game. So that's all right. And so the rest of the schedule after that, kind of up in the air. That's the end of the year for 2025. Adepticon is obviously on there, and maybe some other events early in the year, depending personal schedules and work schedules. But that kind of summarizes the events that we're looking at going to for the rest of the year. All right, let's move on to the topic at hand, jets. Brett, you spanked the shit out of me this week. It was embarrassing. It wasn't just humiliating. It was downright humiliating, embarrassing, and I wanted to pack up my toys and walk away from the table. You beat me so bad. But it was fun, wasn't it?
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. And it kind of helped me remember how I should be playing some of my great dive planes a little more. So
yeah,
it kind of helped me, I think, maybe be a better player with regular BRS too, perhaps.
Yeah, there's an element of how you play denial, advantage denial lists. It's very similar with jets, because in one of the cases, and we'll talk about it with, F-100s and MiG-17s, you're both the same jet generation. Fly against F-4s, all of a sudden they're a later jet generation, so it makes things a little more difficult on the poor MiGs. But I think it's fun. It plays different than regular World War II BRS, and playing both of them make you a better player. Matt, I know we years ago played some jet stuff, played a lot of Korea stuff. So I guess that means you and I on one of these Monday nights are going to have to play jet BRS.
We played was it China Straits?
Right.
With the missiles. And I think we were probably going to talk about this either now or a little bit later. I think the jet rules changed or it's evolved a little bit since we last played, I think.
The missile rules have. The missile rules have changed and kind of gone forward and come back. And now that we have Jet 3 as an authorized thing in the Wing Commander book, so we now have another generation of jets. So that changes stuff for later on events as well. All right, so let's talk about the two time zone or timelines or eras that we're really concentrating on right now. We've obviously done India, Pakistan before, and that's in Wing Commander. Some of the stats are there. We're going to continue to do some of those and put some more scenarios out and play those games. But we're going to back up a little bit and go to some really early jet era stuff. Suez 1956. Now, as I said in the intro, Brett probably can guess and still be wrong on aircraft that are involved in it. Matt, why don't you tell us about all the lovely airplanes that would be in a 1956 Suez scenario?
So Suez's crisis is super interesting because it still has like those very, very early jets and also some of the advanced piston aircraft. It's got the British Venom and Vampire, the twin boom aircraft that I think are really neat, as well as the Hawker Hunter. There's MiGs flying around there. You've got Hawker. Oh gosh, what is it? It's not the Tempest. It's the Sea Fury. There we go. Yep. The Sea Fury flying around doing ground attack missions. Unfortunately, from the only very little bit I've read, it sounds like most of the Egyptian aircraft were destroyed on the ground. So the air war was super, super short, even though there was kind of a large variety of interesting aircraft flying at the time. Probably my favorite is the least successful aircraft probably ever produced was the Westland Wyvern.
I was about to say the Wyvern.
I love that thing. It's so stupid looking.
It is ugly.
And it just did not work. And I think it ran a couple sorties, but it's again a air-to-ground attack aircraft or air-to-sea, depending on, but I don't think they actually mounted torpedoes on it. But it had limited service even in that theater. It is an interesting conflict. Everything kind of went wrong for the Brits, the French, and the Israelis. And international pressure from both the Soviet Union and the U.S. kind of put a stop to their little incursion into the Suez Canal. So very interesting politically. The air wars got a lot of interesting aircraft. There's French Mysteries were also flying at that time. So a lot of interesting aircraft flying, just not a whole lot of interesting conflict going on at the time.
Yeah, I think there's some dogfights between MiG-15s. There's questions about 17s being involved, and which of the dogfights might they have been in, and things like that. were Soviet pilots involved in some of the dogfights? Questions of how much did the Egyptians fly? Things that later on, when you read the actual Arab-Israeli wars, you get much more precise kind of dogfights. These seemed almost to be happenstance kind of events. But there's still an argument as to how much of the Egyptian Air Force was destroyed, how much of it fled to southern Egypt, northern Sudan, that area, and what was going on behind the scenes with stuff being resupplied by either Czechoslovakia or any one of the Soviet co-belligerents that were in there helping them out, trying to mask the arms sales.
And I mean, I'm super excited to play it just because I get to use the sea venoms and the vampires. Right. So I think that's pretty cool from that perspective. There's a lot of Jet 1 and a couple Jet 2s in there too.
It's going to be a lot of first generation jets just kind of pushing their crap around the board.
And from a BRS perspective, that's cool too, because it's one of the few real life scenarios where you have a lot of Jet 1s flying around versus, you could do late World War II with the Meteor, which is also in Suez, I think. Yep. In the ME-262, but I don't think they actually ever shot at each other. It's kind of ahistorical versus this. You've got MiG-15s flying around. Also, I think some. I can't remember what the Egyptians would have been flying as far as piston aircraft.
Not many.
No, probably not. But there's a lot of cool scenarios you could potentially set up just because
chipmunks or something like that as trainers, but I don't think they.
Yeah, and I'd also like to hear kind of like Roger or Leslie or someone talk about it from a British perspective, because that's very much a conflict that we as Americans probably generally don't know a whole lot about, because we weren't involved on the ground in any way, shape, or form, except for maybe monitoring things and being like, hey, cut it out over there.
For once, we weren't the ones, being sneaky and signing away secret pacts and, collaborating with the Israelis to start a war. Yeah, nice job, French and Brits, jerks. Anyway, Brett, I know you're gonna ask a question, something about Suez.
Well, I was about to ask, but I think in that rundown, it's maybe evident. No missiles.
No missiles. So all guns, and even ironically, for some of the ground attack stuff, really basic ground attack. I mean, most of those aircraft didn't, when they had effective ground attack, it was because they strafed a convoy of soft trucks. Not a whole lot of heavy air to ground. So a lot of sorties for air to ground, but not necessarily a lot of capability. It's interesting to read the Egyptian accounts and the Israeli accounts, and everybody was thoroughly afraid of air power. And then everybody also said air power was so successful and blew up all these vehicles, and it doesn't seem to have really had that much of an impact, attack aircraft on the war versus ground forces, versus unlike destroying someone else's air force in the ground. So, all right, well, we'll skip that one, close out Suez 65 or 56, go to Vietnam 65, Rolling Thunder. And that is exactly what we were playing this past weekend. And that was a lot of fun. I think for the group listening to the podcast, I want to call out a couple of the differences and things that are not as the Wing Commander rules are. And this is so some of them are pretty major changes, but the intent is kind of to go back to what Roger and I play tested a few years back, that we think actually ended up working better than kind of the compromise rules that were put into Wing Commander. Not that Wing Commander, those rules don't work. They do. They're just a different take on what we wanted to do. So the first big difference is being able to shoot missiles at other than greater advantage than your opponent. So missiles introduce a couple key things. You can, as long as you're not disadvantaged, shoot at someone of an equal or higher advantage level. And that is a -1 firepower to do it. So that's where we wanted to realize that certain Blood Red Skies rules hold true. If you're disadvantaged, you don't shoot. But a neutral aircraft could threaten a neutral, or an advantaged, also behind an advantaged aircraft, could shoot an IR missile. And part of that, I think, Brett, we talked about it, on the stream was to make people cognizant of the longer range of these weapons and make them feel different than a gun. They need to shoot differently than a gun. They need to not follow the same rules. I think that probably played into at least one of the MiGs that you lost.
Yeah, I think really that whole game I got super lucky because there were lots of times where, I just had to be where I had to be. And I was really vulnerable to a missile shot, but the dice were not in your favor a couple of those times.
Pilot skill 2 and a firepower 0 guy shooting. And once I even shot, in a sense, uphill. I shot from a neutral firepower 2 guy with an AIM 9 Bravo at a neutral MiG that was out in front of me. So it was 1 firepower die. But, it was at a range where I couldn't take a gun. I couldn't influence the guy. I needed another boom chip for the end of the game, and I did not get it.
The whole thing with the hold down between we had Jet 2 and Jet 1, right?
Oh, we had 2 and 2, and then we had 3 and 2. So
3 and 2.
4s were there. It was 3.
That's right.
Jet 3 versus Jet 2. Yeah, so that made it different.
There were a couple of turns where I wasn't, I was making my move and putting myself in an angle and a range that I wanted for another plane I wanted to affect, but I wasn't really closely considering that hold down effect, whether it was affecting me or affecting somebody else. So I started to get a little better at that as the game progressed. Started to become more aware of like, oh yeah, that's right. I gotta be looking at that 9-inch bubble too, and put my aircraft not only in a place where it can make a shot, but also where either I'm escaping the bubble from one of your guys or I'm pushing the bubble on top of some more of your guys so they can't get away.
Yeah, and we'll come back to the advantage because there's a couple changes we talked about real time that may ruffle some feathers, but we think it takes Jet into the follow-on era and not tied to this Jet and piston combined area. So to finish on missiles, the other change is if you are hit and you do not dodge, you die. So it makes guns a very predictable weapon that you generally have a fairly high chance of hitting and putting a boom shit on somebody, but they have a pretty good chance of dodging usually. Whereas missiles are something that you have a fairly low probability of hitting, but if they don't dodge, who cares about advantage levels? You can take an advantage guy out of the game with a missile. So that is a change from what's in Wing Commander back to what we saw in the original Beyond MiG Alley, with super deadly missiles, not super effective, but when they do connect and you fail to dodge, that plane comes off the board. So it can be strategic in the game. It can be the game-winning shot, but it can also be a lot of attempts to take the game-winning shot as I had, and you roll a lot of no successes.
Yeah, that was my experience. I didn't find it to be, it sounds really powerful, sounds really maybe overpowered, but I think it's balanced with the low probability of hit. So,
well, there's 2 historical reasons why we did what we did, and Matt's going to laugh because I know he and I talked through this a lot several years ago. Historically, the probability of heat-seeking missiles in the 1960s is terrible. I mean, you look at the Phantom, and even with 4 heat seekers and 4 radar missiles, there's times guys fired all 8 of them in an engagement and got no hits. So we wanted it to be historical, but in being frustrating, it shouldn't be repetitively frustrating to the point where you're like, why am I even carrying missiles? There should be a chance of it succeeding. So we may tweak the firepower values. We may move it up to 1 or whatever, move it up to 2. We'll just see how it goes over the long term. And as we said in the stream, players are free to do that too. Just if we write AIM 9 Bravos as firepower 0 and you don't like how much you miss, make them firepower 2. But the other part we wanted to do was there was a lot of times an engagement ended with an infrared missile hitting a MiG, and then everybody else scattered and went home at that point. And so we kind of wanted it to be the Hail Mary that if you hit the guy, he doesn't dodge, you're getting that second boom chit because you're shooting him down. So that may be what you need at that point to push over the boom chit threshold to actually end the game and hopefully, in your case, win it. So we'll see if that is the thematic way that they play out. Yes,
I haven't played this rule set. I don't think we got there when we were playing, like you said, several years ago. But it sounds right. Like it sounds more historically accurate.
We ran into a real problem in the later evolutions of the rule set that people would fly through a missile engagement zone just to get to guns. There was no point to use missiles unless you were stuck at long range, because functionally they had the same odds. And generally your guns were better, so you overall had better odds. So there was no reason to shoot a missile. So Roger and I, when we talked about it, we said we kind of have to go back to missiles have to interact fundamentally differently somehow, so that there's a reason to shoot them. There's a reason to possibly time your movement, phase your movement, not to fly through them, to shoot a missile and then to move into gun range, which I think is super thematic.
And I think the couple times we played, this may have been like Talon Straits, but it still holds true. There were a couple times where I think I was flying the MiGs, you were flying the F-86s, and I won because you were trying to set up missile shots for stuff, and I was just like blown through because I didn't have missiles and I didn't care. So And I think this sounds more fun, and frankly, the way I like to play, I like more games rather than less. If this shortens the gameplay, saying we get to go to the next game, that I'm all for that. That sounds exciting to me.
Yeah, I think there's just a lot of components to it. Like you said, when you're flying the simpler aircraft, you're like, woohoo, I don't have to worry about it. I'm just going to jump into heavy hitter range and pummel the other guy. But it does bring up one of the points that's another friction point we had to work with, was tailing. And does tailing still exist? And is there such a thing as missile tailing? And what ranges do you tail with missiles? And we talked through a lot of things over the weekend with Roger. I mean, it was great to sit down there, push the airplanes around the board and just BS and talk about the geometry and the ranges we wanted for missiles in the game. And at one point we'd floated reducing the minimum range and making it like heavy hitter, making it the minimum range 3 instead of the minimum range being 6. And that may still happen. And then we talked about what do we do with tailing? Because we introduced missile tailing in the second variation of Beyond MiG Alley, and that didn't really feel right. It didn't feel right that you tailed a guy out at 12 inches. So we batted around a missile tailing it at 9 inches. So basically that super tight phase and it doesn't have a min range. So if you're a missile guy, you tail people out to 9 inches. If you're a gun guy, you tail people at 6 inches. And once again, we wanted to pick numbers that mean something to BRS, because BRS does everything in 3-inch margins. So 3, 6, 9, 12. Those are all numbers that we think about easily. And so those were some of the changes that we played with. Are they written in stone? Absolutely not. Are they things that are mechanics we're probably going to keep and continue to tweak? Absolutely. So there will be some kind of missile tailing. Right now it's going to be 3 inches longer than gun tailing. And it's going to be whether or not, we're not tracking missiles. We're not saying we run out of missiles, because there were so few missile shots overall in the game that one aircraft never ran out of missiles. So
I think there was one game where you ran out of missiles.
There was one that we played because we were playing with twin missiles on an F-86.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we've even had that discussion that in certain scenarios, rather than saying unlimited missiles, do you have an equipment card? That it's like a laden token. Throw a laden token on each of the guys and just pull that off when they shoot their missiles, because they have 1, maybe 2 shots. But we want to simplify the bookkeeping. I mean, you and I were talking about it, Matt. We don't enjoy games with a whole heck of a lot of bookkeeping. I don't want someone having to record with a dial or all these other things. How many missiles of each type do they have on each aircraft?
Yeah, and I mean, as it is, BRS can potentially have a lot of tokens rolling around on the board or near the base as it is, and adding one more just gets more clutter to move along.
Yeah,
places.
Exactly. And there's no need to have 4 missile tokens on the base of your fighter. That's what's the point there. So, Brett, I don't know how you felt about if I had belt-fed missiles. I don't think it would have changed much in the games.
No, I agree. I think unlimited missiles was perfectly fine because there just wasn't that many shots, right? So,
exactly.
I mean, how many? They had 4, right? Typically. Yeah,
the F-100s carried 4. The F-4s had 4 AIM-9s and 4 radar missiles that could be shot in a dogfight. But realistically, I mean, you're talking 4 missiles for each one of them.
Yeah, I think you'd be lucky to even get off 2 in any one aircraft. So maybe even early war it wouldn't matter that much.
Yeah,
Like, I mean,
well, that's what we talked about with the early
F-86s.
MiG-21s. Yeah, and the early MiG-21s as well carried 2 missiles. So F-86s and MiGs both. In both cases, people are going to boom out for a variety of reasons before they exhaust their missiles. Or so it seems. Now we'll just have to keep playing it and play test it and see what comes up.
So this is tangentially related, or it is related to BRS jets, especially Vietnam. Is there any modification to the ground attack?
We've pushed that aside because yes, there is. So where it sits, and this we have not played in about 2 years, is there's a ramp up of air to ground, and I don't know. We're not quite sure yet if we're just going to introduce another factor on there for aircraft, or if it's going to be done by type. So if we say that if you are a fighter, you're considered to have 3 attack dice. If you're a fighter bomber, because of the load you carry, you're considered to have 5 dice. If you're a B-52, just grab every Blood Rinse guy's dice you can find and roll it.
That grid score is gone.
Yeah, exactly. So there's ludicrous examples of that when we have a B-36 for Roger in the game versus the important things in the change in your combat load for like an F-105 and the change in odds of killing something. Now that's a whole nother discussion. We could have an entire episode about air to ground in the Vietnam and beyond era and how bomb fuses, warloads, target type, all those things conspire to change the odds. But at the end of the day, that's kind of what you do when you build the scenario. You determine what are we going to bomb, how hard is it going to be to kill, and if you have more bomb loads, you just take more targets.
And I guess I was also trying to get into this, and BRS may not be the venue for this type of game, but like Wild Weasel missions.
I'm glad you bring that up. So we had a big discussion about that. We agreed, or Roger and I shouldn't say we agreed because we both floated this idea years ago, was that there needs to both be a Wild Weasel play before the game and Wild Weasel on the table, just like there needs to be SAMs mostly before the game. But if you want to be a jerk and have your guys fly through SAMs on the table, then there needs to be a mechanic for how that missile shot works. The reality is BVR, SAM engagements, IFF kind of trickery, all those things, low altitude intercepts, all these different things that really became big in Vietnam are going to be handled with cards. And so it'll be your choice to say, okay, and I haven't figured out if Wild Weasel is doctrine or theater. I kind of like it as a theater because it's a theater capability. It may become a doctrine, who knows? But these are cards that you can put in your hand and will affect the gameplay beforehand. So that's why I kind of say Wild Weasel is a theater card because it allows me to play it against their, integrated air defense, and that way those 2 cards can cancel each other out. If I don't bring one, then they can shoot at me with SAMs prior to the mission, et cetera, et cetera. And we've talked about it, but because I want to allay some concerns here, the purpose of the before game card play doesn't change. It's really assigning either boom chits or changing advantage levels. At no point do Roger and I want to take airplanes off the board with the card play beforehand. But we also know that we need to have that card play mean something. So let's say it's Operation Bolo and you can shoot BVR. You're probably going to assign some boom chits to the squadron and not necessarily kill any of the 4 MiGs that are going to show up, but their buddies got shot down, so now they've got, one boom chit, 2 boom chits, whatever.
Yes.
So I think that's how that's all going to play out because that's what we've experimented with before. It seemed to make sense, and it was a straightforward balancing of capabilities that were like jamming and radar support. They were known things you wanted to take if you wanted to counteract something.
Well, I'm glad I don't have an EA6 for no reason.
Yes, paint it up. We'll see how that works out for you. American Air Pirate. Brett will probably still punish you severely with his MiG-17s, which they were fun. I enjoyed flying against them. So in case people didn't see the stream, I lost horribly with F4s. What did I lose? 2 of my 4 F4s, I want to say, that you shot down. It was not a good day for the F4s.
I don't know if there was 2. I felt like I just shot down 1 of each.
Yeah, maybe. And then obviously, well, actually, when we got to the F100, you shot down an F100 and an F105, and then made the second guy jettison his bombs. But
Now,
I am proud that the F105 then gunned one of your MiGs. That was payback, and that was
my biggest
I'm so
question.
glad I didn't have rough ride on that since I was flying MiG-17.
That's the nice thing about the 17 is the 17 being a firepower 2 heavy hitter, but not having rough ride. You don't get those moments where I'm right where I want and nothing happens. So
Now my big question was it Trevor's F4s or my F4s that got shot down?
it was your F4s.
Damn
I'm
it.
sorry.
Damn it, Doug.
The Sundowners had a bad day. They're so beautiful, though. I had to put those on, and literally the reason I picked yours instead of Trevor's was because we had 4, and so I brought the Sundowners out for that one to take a 4v5. I enjoyed the scenario, even though I got the crap kicked out of me because it was very Vietnamish. You had an ace and his knucklehead wingman bouncing us from high cover while we were trying to dogfight everyone else, and it was good. Both of them went well. I thought the F105 mission, for me as the player with F100s and F105s, literally, I was rereading the mission report from, I think it's 4 April 1965. I was rereading again exactly what happened. The F100s see the MiGs, pitch off on the MiGs. The MiGs go, screw you, buddy, and just blow through and get in the middle of the F105s who are jettisoning bombs, shooting at MiGs, all this other stuff. And I just laughed. I'm like, that's exactly what happened. Brett's like, I'm not going to anchor down with the F100s. I'm going after those 2 juicy F105s. So that made me feel better about how the scenarios played out.
Do you think there's any way you could have hung on a periphery and used just your missiles and stay out of? I don't know. Would that even be possible on the table? I don't know. Yeah,
it would. We were a little constrained because we were streaming, so we had about a 4x4 ish area. I think that I could have played the edges of the board better. I really kind of, went after the first 3 MiGs that showed up and was trying to kind of ignore the high cover guys until they pitched in, which probably isn't the best plan. I probably should have curved around where those high cover guys were, knowing that they're going to move on the board. And if they're advantaged, they're going to move before me because I'm probably already have given up some advantage. But tactically, I think I had never played jets with a strike package. So I wasn't sure if you're going to be able to blow through and go right to the F105s, and yes, you did. So
yeah, 20 inches is a long way I could cover.
Yeah, exactly. Dive. Yeah, you can dive and you can get right in the middle of whatever's on that strike package, which to me is what we want because we don't. I know Matt and I, when we play Cold War ACM, while it was a fun game, it felt like there was it took too long to develop into the fight. With Blood Red Skies, it's super easy to just burn advantage, dive right in, and now you're moving.
We were doing a lot of maneuvering, maneuvering.
And that's that game concentrates more on the geometry of the maneuver. Blood Red Skies, I think, allows you to put a lot of aircraft on the table and not worry so much about that. But
different styles.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and it was like Missile Threat. Missile Threat played very differently. We will do an episode where Brett and I can talk about Missile Threat and have Steve berate us for how little we understood. But we had a lot of fun as the Iranians, and nice job to Brett because he shot down the AWACS with his Iranian F4s before he died gloriously for the Republic.
I did look at all those pictures. That did look like a lot of fun.
It was.
And we talked about this on the side, but I really wish the minis were bigger because they're so tiny. They're just so
that was
tiny.
all our takeaway. Our takeaway was, man, that was a lot of fun. Man, we want to play it with something larger with us. 200, 285th, 300, whatever.
And Casey's probably screaming us through his flu or whatever he's got. No, it's fine.
Not happy. Exactly. It's perfectly fine at 1/600. No, it's not. bigger airplanes. But
Yeah, man,
so,
with the altitude changes, that game, I'm going off a tangent here about missile threat, but with the altitude changes you make and everything, I walked away from the table after that game, went over and looked at the folks that were selling that 1-inch tiered terrain. And I was like, man, you can make some cool tables where you actually have to negotiate terrain and everything. It was sweet.
Yeah. Well, we had a good discussion about that afterwards, which leads a little bit into the one thing I don't like about Blood Red Skies, unlike a lot of these other games that have altitudes, is you don't really feel like you need terrain in Blood Red Skies. And if you did put a lot of terrain out there, all it would do is get in the way of your advantage stands and the way you could pivot fore and aft. So that's one of the unfortunate things is the best you get is rolling out a map with some nice targets on it. Nice neoprene targets that are available at bluefalconhobbies.com should you want any paid plug.
Buy some ship targets. We've got trillions.
Yeah, exactly. We literally have all the fleets, every single one of them for World War II. Yeah. So yeah, that was Missile Threat. That was fun. We'll do an episode on that and chat about it, and then hopefully Matt will get you to play that sometime.
Yeah, well, I've got that week off. I was just about to say, hey, if you can roll out the rules, maybe we can play a starter game or something.
Over there. They should be sitting back there, but they're not. They're over there.
No, all your other air games that you're trying to, I guess, flex.
I am. Look how credible I am as an aviation wargaming podcaster. Look at all these games behind me. Or look at those books. See all those really, really expensive books about MiGs?
I don't see any leather-bound ones, so they can't be that fancy.
Yeah, from Gordon's books that cost more than some leather-bound books that I've bought. Yeah, some of his books cost more than my Horus Heresy book on the end of the table there. So yeah,
That's kind of frightening.
Paper. Yeah, it is. It was all research for BRS Jets, right? That's exactly what it was, because we're making so much money off this. Oh,
is that what you tell your wife?
Yeah, that's exactly the lie I tell my wife. Yes, dear, I'm making tons of money off this stuff. Which we might as well clarify this. Warlord Games has zero desire right now to take things further than what's in Wing Commander anytime soon. So that's just to clarify. So people don't hold your breath and think, oh wait, I'm going to wait for the official Rolling Thunder box set to come out, because it probably isn't. So jump in, play with the rules when we put them out there, and add to the discussion. Should people want to know where to find things, leadpursuit.net. When you go there, there's obviously the resources tab you can click on. That's where you get all your cards and stuff. You could just type /aircraft after it, and that will take you to the aircraft cards page. And then you'll see down at the bottom, next to all the hypothetical aircraft, there's a Beyond MiG Alley section for the cards. So you can go in there and pull down the aircraft we have, which let me pull that up to give a quick rundown, just so Matt can be jealous.
Hold on. We're a .net?
We're a .net.
Well,
Because
I feel dirty.
Well, you should, considering you may not be enough of a nerd to remember who the original leadpursuit.com is. The guys that did the F-16 Falcon stuff, they still own their domain. So,
Jesus.
Yeah, exactly. But anyway, so I digress. There's F4s on there, F-100s, F-105s, both the D and the G Wild Weasel. Sabres of a bunch of different varieties and countries. MiGs from the PLAF, the PLANAF, the VPAF, all these communist forces. F-104s, Hawker Hunters, Fulland Gnats. The Tufani, also known as the Huragon. Yeah, all kinds of stuff on there. So there's a bunch of different jets for the early jet age stuff. We'll add some more. I just haven't made the cards. And as soon as I get the cards made, we'll get them up there. So if you need the resources, they're there. The rules. So yes, the rules. When I get down to rewriting everything that Roger threw at me, and not just Roger, but all of you who watched the stream. So Don Gilmore, Roz, all of you who gave me feedback, thank you very much. I need about 2 weeks to go internalize all that feedback. So when I get done internalizing that feedback, we'll have a much more coherent set of rules. And we'll put that out on the website, same spot, so you can pull that down and play with those rules. All right. Matt, what questions do you have about jets based on what you didn't watch and what you didn't see us do?
You did offhand mention bombers. So I know this was a point of contention with BRS Mig Alley with the A1 Skyraider.
Yes.
Have we come to any resolution on what to do with that aircraft?
The Skyraider will have a separate trait. The easiest answer for the Skyraider was to give it an air-to-ground factor. And that may be where in the 1965 and on world it ends up. So as Roger and I talked about it, what we kind of came across is everything that is Korea or Korea with missiles and a little bit of dusting, we kind of feel uses one set of jet rules that is literally what you have in Blood Red Skies. When you get to 1965 and when you get a lot of Jet 3s out there, an interesting problem comes up. So didn't talk about it earlier. Brett may have alluded to it. The rule for jet is your initial altitude or initial advantage gain can be counteracted by any enemy aircraft within 9 inches. Any. So we stopped for a moment and we said, does a Skyraider keep a MiG-17 from gaining advantage within 9 inches? A Skyraider. Does the Fat Kid? And I think our answer was no. Was that this the jet rule for advantage gain at the start of the turn has to be in the 1965 era where we've got such a wide variety. It has to be tied to the same rule that's at the end of the turn in the pilot action, a jet of a same or higher generation. So I hate changing cards. I hate, even though all the arguments we've had about aggressive tactics, I hate putting out anything that is different than what is on a Blood Red Skies card. But I think when you play the 1965 games, it suddenly no longer makes sense for a jet to not be able to gain advantage. And even in the case of a Phantom, Jet 3, it really doesn't make sense that just because there's a MiG there, they don't use that immense thrust, to gain advantage at the beginning of the turn. They're going to do it in a straight line, but
yeah, the two giant engines.
Yeah. So there were some discussions there. Is that a final ruling? No, not at all. Roger and I have to play test it and try it. But I think, Brett, you were part of that discussion as we sat there. We felt like the losing the ability to gain altitude because of somebody of an inferior aircraft type didn't make sense.
Well, it felt right and fun in the game we played because we had the F-100s and the F-4s. So, depending on what was happening, there was a different calculus that was going on there. Yeah,
and I think that's what we want is we want people to consider what kind of opponent am I flying against, and does that opponent hold me down or not? And it brings up one more question that we've wrangled with is per the wing commander rules, you can shoot a missile anytime you would shoot the gun. There is the discussion that we've had is, do we want to allow missile shots in that first shooting phase that starts the Blood Red Skies turn? There are times we've said, no, we want missiles to be something unique. You have to shoot as a pilot action. There have been times we said yes, because it allows you to start your turn, shoot a missile at long range, close into guns, take that gunshot, probably from a tailing opportunity or something like that. And that feels cinematic. I won't say thematic. I will say cinematic because for this classic too close for missile switching to guns. And now I owe everyone a beer for using a Top Gun line. But the thought is at least that plays into a mindset that people have of what air combat's like. Does it fit perfectly? No, but it's
for what it's worth. I think that is more in line with Warlord games. Like you said, cinematic. It's the comic book about the movie, about the book, about the actual action. It's and that does. I mean, I was reading some old Commando comics about. I think it was the Korean War, and it's just about as over the top action centric, like kind of goofy dialogue type stuff as you can get. And I think that is that brand for BRS. So I think it's not a bad idea to allow the shot at the beginning.
Yeah. And the only reason we'd taken it away was kind of future proofing for an equipment card for certain aircraft systems or something that would give you a chance to take an opportunity shot, because that's really what that first shot at the beginning of the turn is. And so we kind of thought about it is that helmet mounted sights? Is it advanced gun sight? Some we were kind of future proofing for that, to say that equipment card or that capability, that trait allowed you to shoot a missile in the first phase. But realistically, I think what we want to have happen is we want someone of a lower advantage level to end up out in front of you accidentally, or through your own good air combat maneuvering. But someone with a lower advantage level to end up out in front of you by moving after you've moved and after you've shot and everything else. And now you start your turn, you see them, you take that missile shot, probably miss, and then you move into an opportunity attack with guns.
Wonder if it could be like a first turn BVR shot, like you were talking about, maybe an equipment card or something, where you extend that range out to 24 or something instead of just a typical 18. And after that, it's always just 18.
Gives you a chance to do something like that, the first turn or whatever, or make if you have radar missiles and ability to make it a forward quarter shot early in the game. There's a lot of things you can do to open up opportunities to shoot, and I think that's a good thing. I think the only concern I have, and I guess it really, if you're going to say what does it fall into historically, it's kind of a ripple shooting of missiles. You could have somebody shoot at the end of their move at a target that's already moved in front of them. But no, I guess that guy would leave. He'd be gone. I guess there's not really an opportunity that you would have back-to-back missile shots against somebody, I don't think, unless some advantage states changed in there. But
I did like it when we played it. I was an advocate for you being able to shoot in, before
which was
your
funny
move.
because, full disclosure for everybody, I was only going, no, I can't do that. And you're like, no, that makes sense. I'm like, yeah, it actually kind of does make sense. If my opponent says it's okay, then I'm going to shoot, which we did, and we rolled the die afterwards, and I still missed. That was the funniest part.
I mean, that's the big thing from our experience with the missiles. They almost always miss anyway, so you're going to end up going to guns at some point anyways.
Well, I think what it does is it teaches you to do an actual real thing you do in a missile dogfight, is you fly good basic fighter maneuvers for that follow-on gunshot. You don't just sell everything to take a missile shot, because it is relatively low probability of kill, even with missiles today. And so you continue flying a good dogfight, and then you follow that up with a higher probability, hopefully, gunshot.
That makes sense to me.
Well,
it sounds fun, and that's the other thing. It sounds fun. It does.
Yeah, it'll take some playtesting. Are we at a final BRS Vietnam rule set? Oh, hell no. Oh, we're not even close. We're still throwing things against the wall to try to figure out what cool things could be done to make the missions and the scenarios feel like Vietnam. What theater cards do we do? What doctrine cards? We're still in that phase. But there's some basic rules we can put out there that people can play with. And I think what we want to see is we want people to try it. And we want, just like having the master aircraft list, refined what the stats, traits, and everything for aircraft were, this beta rules is going to kind of be the same thing. Play it. Tell us what you think. Tell us we're all wrong. And we'll come up with something hopefully better. Hopefully. Or it'll just continue to suck. But that's probably what I'll do. Anyway, Matt, anything else you want to close with? Anything else you questions or other?
No, I'm excited. I've got I think when we started playing missile rules and everything like that, we talked about moving to Vietnam, and I'm excited to see it come to fruition. Also excited to pull out all the Vietnam era jets I've got, get them painted up. Yes. I've got more. I think they're 1-200 B-52s from Dragon models that I've pulled out, and I'm trying to finish the ones I started building, and so that I'd be interested to see how you integrate something like a B-52 into that.
That would,
knowing that there's at least one that had got a shoot down.
Well, functionally, it's no different than having the B-29s that we did in the Korea scenario. You just have to to what we learned at Adepticon, doing that is you just have to build the physical distance in so that there's a buffer and it's not turn one with the MiGs.
Yeah, I got to figure out how to get that thing on a stand, though. Is the big problem?
Yeah, that's not going to be easy. Not easy at all. Brett, anything on your end? Anything you want in summary?
Well, I know we've been talking about some early stuff, and then of course Vietnam. Have you allowed yourself to think beyond Vietnam much?
I have, but mostly that's been kind of thought space that is partitioned in the sense, like we talked about with helmet mounted sight. How do I leave a gap in the rules so that 1980s aircraft show up and can do cooler things than 1970s Vietnam aircraft? And so that's kind of where my brain is, not wanting to change or not wanting stat creep too much, wanting to use BRS traits. So then you get to aircraft like the F-15 and the F-16 that would definitely be Jet 4 Great Climb, things like that use the core principles of BRS, but push it into the 80s. I know Roger is adamant that will never work, but I think it's something we're going to do just to play with it at least, especially because Connor wants F-14s. So.
Yeah, Connor does want it. Oh, shit. I forgot about his decals. Hopefully Connor doesn't listen to this, right?
No, Connor's never
good.
going to listen to
Okay,
this
I'm
podcast.
safe.
Oh, wait. Yeah.
Yeah, he's going to listen to this one with my luck. So what you're saying is we need to go to baby steps and go to Falklands before we do F-15s, F-16s.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Did I tell you how much I hate the Falklands conflict? Yeah.
You're just mad because of the lawn darts flying around and being successful.
Exactly. I am superfluously frustrated with the absolute lies and disinformation that come out from the Harrier community about the Falklands. But that's
the Royal Navy wasn't flying the Phantom in that, were they?
No, not it.
Yeah, they'd lost or gotten rid of the Phantom by that point, I guess. Big
bombers and
the Vulcan and that's I just recently listened to a podcast about that mission. That was, man, that's something else. Yeah. For bombing a runway that was subsequently repaired fairly quickly.
Pretty much a blank dirt strip almost, but
yeah.
All right. Well, cool. Well, we did receive some feedback. Apparently people don't like our sign-off line. And I'll be honest, I hate our previous sign-off line. So we are once again in need of a sign-off. Because I guess nobody wants me to tell them that we can help them not become a grognard. But I also am not going to say keep climbing for, never mind, I'm not going to finish the sentence. Because that's the worst sign-off line ever thought of. So help us, help you, for us to not sound like idiots. Send us some suggested sign-off lines, either comments on the website or on Facebook, and we'll play test those or audio test, whatever those. We'll test drive those sign-off lines, see if any of them are any good. And with that,
like a good wingman, Lead Pursuit is there.
You all ready to do your Robin Olds impression?
Nice. Steve and I got a nice picture of us in front of his F4.
It was an F4 for ants. Or did you guys look like ants?
Yeah.
No, that was cool. Whatever. Okay, cool. So you assholes ready to start this thing? I don't even have anything funny to start with tonight. Matt, stop building things. Yes, I can hear you. I can hear you rustling in the background already. Sit there on your hands, drink your beer.
Starting a fire with sticks.
Yeah, that's what it sounds like in there. Like, what are you, sanding? Sanding screw clips off?